Alright, I'll do a quick stream. Nothing too long. I gotta go somewhere. We're gonna continue a little bit with this Smuggler storyline. And I want to learn a little bit more about the Spanish Empire. So, see if any of these videos are worth a damn. But yeah, I mean, I guess the issue, again, is gonna be, I want to learn more than just, this place fought with this place. They had a war over here. There's gotta be more to the story than that. What the hell? What happened to my YouTube or the YouTube stream windows all off? Oh, what the fuck? Jesus Christ. This window gets so freaking. I don't even know if I'm reducing the size. Been doing this for a while. God, this two windows all screwed up. There we go. Okay. Jesus fuck. Sorry about that.
D. The Western Roman Empire has fallen. In its absence, chaos envelops the West as the former territory of the empire becomes dominated by Germanic warlords. It is the end of classical civilization. However, the beginning of a new era. In this age, the seeds are sown for the nations who will go further than Rome. One such nation would rise in the Iberian Peninsula. It takes its name from the word Hispania, the Roman name for the peninsula. It is España. Spain. Spain's road to glory would not be without difficult twists and seemingly insurmountable obstacles. In the 8th century, the Visigoths, who had overcome the peninsula, were themselves overcome by a great power which had arisen in the Far East, the Umayyad Caliphate. Invigorated by the new religion of Islam, what is today Spain would mark the western boundary of an empire which stretched to the borders of India. Islamic rule would last for centuries, but not forever. The cross would rise again as the Iberians fought to reclaim their lost homeland. This fight, called the Reconquista, would last for centuries and end in victory. A subject of past empires throughout their history, the Spanish would come together and set forth to build their own empire, one even larger than the empires which once ruled over them. This empire would not solely be based in the Old World, however, but rather in new worlds. Spain became arguably the first global power. They maintained a presence, from an early point, all across the globe, especially in the Americas, where their expansive dominion stretched from the Louisiana Territory at one point to the southern reaches of South America. But in their empire-building efforts, they would not be alone, and in the end, their empire too would crumble, giving rise to a number of new nations across the world, from Mexico to the Philippines. As the empire crumbled, the fate of Spain itself became uncertain. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to Fire of Learning. Thank you for joining us as we now add Spain to the list of nations and peoples whose amazing story we have covered in our documentary series. In a poll we did a while back, you voted for our next documentary to be in Europe. And ladies and gentlemen, your wish is my command. Before we begin, I would like to thank Charlie Moss, Benjamin Posniak, Alicia Ward, Eyal Shankman, Bob Graham, Mikey, Julius, Beefbonger, Jonas Lill, Casey Lambert, Jen, Fearless Phillip, Jake, Rob, Southern and Eastern coastal areas of the Peninsulan world, Tessians of the spot who had, as well as prior to Roman rule, a number of people controlled the area we today call Spain, as well as Portugal and Andorra. The Iberians were a group of people who had developed a distinct culture by the 6th century BC, though were quite influenced by foreign Mediterranean powers. Iberian groups such as the Tartessians of the south, in fact, were heavily influenced by the contemporary Mediterranean world. The Iberians dominated much of the southern and eastern coastal areas of the peninsula. Another important group were the Vascones, the ancestors of the modern Basques, a group native to the north of the peninsula which remains intact to this day. These groups were not Indo-European. In fact, the Basques continue to speak a non-Indo-European language so old that it is not related to any other known language on Earth. The Celts, who were Indo-Europeans, also made their way to Iberia, where they mixed with the native inhabitants, giving rise to the group known as the Celt-Iberians, who inhabited the north and...
I wanted something more along the lines of this. We're not just talking about leaders, we're not just talking about wars, we're talking about languages, we're talking about peoples, right?
West of the peninsula. They also introduced iron to the peninsula. As is often the case in this area and place and time, these groups were not united, but rather consisted of many different distinct tribes, linked by a common culture. Iberia's rich mineral wealth and position in between the Atlantic Ocean and Mediterranean Sea made it a target for settlement for great ancient empires as well, these being primarily the Phoenicians, the Greeks, and later the Carthaginians, who were themselves an offshoot of the Phoenicians. Carthage would
What is it even doing? This is that reused animation I was talking about yesterday. Admiral Newman, nice.
Everything on Coruscant is huge. You see those city towers as we flew in? How many people you figure live in those? Millions?
Looks like some of the city towers lost a few levels.
Heard the Sith Empire hit this planet pretty hard. Even knocked the Jedi Temple off its pedestal. Want to find Skavik before we're too old to shoot straight? We're gonna need local help.
Damn, I'll forget you.
We'll just rattle some skulls until Skavik falls out.
Wouldn't mind getting some practice with Sparky here, but I know a faster way. There's a gambler named Darmus Polarin who keeps tabs on everything worth knowing about Coruscant. Good man. You'll like him.
Worth a visit, I guess. Where do I find this Darmus?
Vidu always said if you look for a sabacc table surrounded by beautiful women, you'll find Darmus. But I can narrow that down. I still have Vidu's hollow frequency contacts, and Darmus is one of them. Give me a second, and we'll talk to the man himself.
Corso, is that you? It's been too long, you rascal. What brings you to Coruscant?
A friend and I are in a real bind. Is there a place we can meet you?
Of course. Come to my private cantina booth. I'm here now, winning my 10th hand of sabacc against a very persistent Rhodian. Hope you don't mind the occasional blaster fire. The cantina is in a rowdy part of Coruscant.
Sounds like my kind of place.
Do you know how to play sabacc? If not, I'll teach you. It's the favorite game around here.
Do they have
Keep
a
your
sabacc
commonly
minigame
channel
in here?
open, Darmus. I've
I'm
got
not
some
familiar
bad
in
news about Vidu.
Knights of the Old Republic, which kind of led to
Bring Darmus up
this
to
game
speed
being
while we
made.
travel, Captain.
Knights of the Old Republic, sabacc was like a pretty prominently featured minigame. It was pretty fun, actually. Bring Darmus up to speed while traveling.
Don't tell Darmus anything he doesn't need to know.
You got it.
Would colonize a substantial portion of the Iberian Peninsula, eventually coming into conflict over the region with the Romans. Rome acquired the Carthaginian territory in 206 BC in the Second Punic War. However, the conquest of the peninsula, which was still in large part controlled by the various aforementioned tribes, was not complete until 19 BC, as Rome was entering its golden age. Iberia was then heavily Romanized, though certain regions, namely in the rugged north, remained relatively isolated. The people of Iberia retained many of their old ways of life, but largely adopted the Roman one, including the Roman culture, language, political systems, and religions, including Christianity, which would later become dominant. They were, naturally then, also able to enjoy the architectural, technological, economic, and military presence which came with Roman rule. However, Roman rule, let alone its golden age, was not to last. By the 5th century AD, the empire had split into two following years of inefficiency. The West began to struggle to maintain its hold on its territories. Iberia, along with Gaul, Britannia, and the west of North Africa, would be overrun by Germanic invaders. The tribes which moved into the peninsula and would cause the undoing of Roman Hispania specifically were the Suebi, Alans, Vandals, and above all, the Visigoths.
More
In
befitting
the autumn
of
of
the character.
409 AD, the former three tribes moved into Iberia and began undoing the tenuous Roman hold on the peninsula, carving out their own kingdoms. The Vandals settled in the far south, forming the territory called Vandalusia, modern-day Andalusia, with another group moving northwest. The Alans, who were not Germanic but rather hailed
Andalusia? Andalusia. Interesting thing, because the Andals from Game of Thrones, and also I think they have the Andals in not Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings. Yeah, the Andals. Well, that's Game of Thrones. Oh, Aragon. That's what I was thinking about. My family comes from the Aragon region of Spain. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Shows how close I am to my ancestry, right? Oh, jeez, bro, come on. I don't want this. By the way, I mean, I know at the time that when these books came out, I didn't read any of them, but I know, there was no kind of weird like furry angle to this, but doesn't this like straight up look like kind of like furry like art of a dragon? Let me see. Furry dragon. Sounds weird to say furry dragon. That's not what I mean really. But like, you know, people who have like an attraction to like animals and like make their little furry characters. I don't know what you would call that for like a reptile, but I mean, I'm not wrong, right? Does this art not look like that? Because it almost gives them like a human looking face, you know, a very expressive looking face. This face right here, it's like, you know, come do snoo with me. Oh my god. Look, I'm not like other people. I don't get like freaked out over furries. I think it's a little weird. Don't get me wrong, but like, are they hurting anyone? If they're not, then who cares, right? Let them do their thing. Oh, geez, look how pretty. I didn't know this was. Oh, that's in Andalusia. What is in the Aragon region? Is anything cool? Okay, I mean, that looks kind of cool, I guess. I think I have seen this town before. I think this might have been like the ruling town of the Aragon region back in the day. But outside of that, I don't know if I see anything cool. It's kind of funny. This area looks like southern United States a little bit. I mean, I guess Spain in general is going to be your Mediterranean, you know, climate, which is similar to California, so makes a lot of sense. All right. Anyways,
from the Eurasian
the
steppes
Allens.
settled in much of modern Portugal and central Spain, and the Suebi, the northwestern quarter of the peninsula. However, the Romans, weakened though they were not going to let the region go without a proper fight. Not all of the tribes who migrated into Rome in this age were exclusively hostile. In fact, the Romans managed to enter into periodic, uneasy alliances with some of them. One such group were the Visigoths, upon whom the Emperor Honorius called to help Rome resist the invaders. In exchange, they would be granted land in the southwest of Gaul, or modern-day France. In 415, the Visigoths, under their king Vollia, agreed, and the arrangement proved, for the time being, successful. The Romans were able to retake a fair portion of the peninsula, namely the eastern portion of the Gaulonic land, with the Suebi annexing the western half of the Hellenic dominion during the chaos. In 429, the Vandal king Gaiseric, seeking better opportunities, moved his people to North Africa, establishing what eventually became a large kingdom there that included the Balearic Isles. In their absence, the Romans reclaimed more territory in the south. However, the
Suebi. What a name. How do you know I got laughed out of any kind of like diplomatic talks or anything? Oh, I'm from the Suebi region. A Suebi. There's a baddie right here. My kind of woman. What a delayed response on this chick on the right.
Welcome, my friend. I'm Darmus Polaran, Sabak player and information resource without equal.
You seem to have a lot of female admirers.
Women seem to find me irresistible. Just one more way, I'm an extremely fortunate man. Sorry to hear about Vidu. He was a man of refined taste and a terrible card player. I'll truly miss him. Life is like Sabak. The trick is to quit while you're ahead and enjoy your winnings. Exactly how I'll spend my twilight years.
Best of luck to you.
Who needs luck? With the right preparation and a flexible strategy, a man can be ready for anything life throws at him. Even death.
I feel like this dude probably cheats.
I know this isn't a social call. Corso says you have troubles, and I'm prepared to help.
I want payback on a man named Skavik.
Yes, Corso is equally emphatic about that. Having met Skavik, I understand completely. Skavik is well known in the galactic underworld. He's earned death sentences across the galaxy for everything from armed robbery to kidnapping. He's known to be in the Sith Empire's pocket, and he even cheats at cards. I'm happy to help you find him.
Okay, well I guess this guy probably doesn't cheat then.
If there's one thing I hate, it's a card cheat.
In my book, if you can only win by cheating, you shouldn't be playing the game at all. Soon as Corso mentioned Skavik's name, I alerted all my best informants. I'm getting some interesting leads.
What did I tell you, Captain? Darmus can find out anything. We'll have Skavik in no time.
Let's hear Darmus's brilliant advice first.
I don't offer advice, Captain. Only information. What you do with it is up to you. Skavik recently used the services of a data slicer named Kixie in the Migrant Merchants Guild headquarters. Quite talented, I hear.
I'll say this. The man has a way with women.
I don't think it's a romantic relationship. Skavik doesn't comport with aliens. Even near humans like Kixie. Kixie might be able to help you flush Skavik out of hiding. Be careful, though. The guild is well armed and doesn't like outsiders. Excuse me, but I noticed some delightful young ladies in desperate need of attention. Duty calls.
Baby would, years later, move to take much of Hispania for themselves, and the Visigoths invaded again with the permission of the Emperor to drive them out. In the subsequent decades, the Visigoths would drive the Suebi into the northwestern corner in the region now known as Galicia. The borders of Hispania.
Galicia.
This is the best feeling. A sky full of stars, a new planet waiting across the galaxy, never gets old.
I thought you'd never been off Ord Mantell.
You know that much about me, Captain? You're a rare man to read someone's whole life so fast. When I came back to Ord Mantell, I thought that was the end for me. Thanks for giving me a way off.
Didn't really answer my question though, did you?
So, how about that war, huh, Captain?
How
You
about it?
think the Republic will stop hiding behind the Treaty of Coruscant and admit they want the Empire wiped out? It doesn't sit right negotiating with people who want every man, woman, and kid dead.
I mean, he wouldn't.
Doesn't matter how they kill each other.
His character
as
doesn't
long as
care
there's
about it.
credits to be made.
And you call me naive. There's no credits to be made in an Imperial slave collar. I joined the Peace Brigade when I was 14. I know what a world looks like when the Empire's done with it.
What's that? A bunch of do-gooders?
The Brigade's a relief organization. Go into worlds abandoned by the Treaty of Coruscant. Help people displaced by the Empire. I was a kid looking for an adventure. After 2 months, let's just say there are no kids in war zones.
He's been in this fight since he was 6 years old. Okay. It is remarkable
There.
how much
Better.
more I can, like I have fun with this character, whereas before I couldn't. Even though it's the same voice actor, same lines, same, you know, dialogue, all that stuff. When I was playing with my earlier version of my Smuggler character, it just felt like a chore. I just couldn't get into it, and I just never really. I think I tried to make a Twi'lek because I wanted to have like a, you know, different character for each class. You know, I didn't have a Twi'lek character before, so I thought it'd be interesting. But I don't think I really liked the design, and I just couldn't really get into playing as him. Whereas I do like the design I picked for this dude. You know, again, he looks like a swashbuckling adventurer kind of stereotype, and we're here for it. I'm gonna roll into that cover.
There. Better?
kind of forgot his moves already. This class is kind of fun to play. I like this. Compared to my troopers class, he would just kind of run and gun. I like the whole duck and cover aspect of this. Reminds me of Time Splitters or Time Crisis, whatever the fuck that game is called that you play in the arcade. Did he heal himself? Bastard.
It would continue to fluctuate. All the while, the unstable relationship between Visigoths and Romans would also fluctuate. In fact, despite the many challenges posed to the Visigoths, not merely externally but the infighting as well, it would be they who would ultimately wrest Hispania from Rome's grasp. King Euric, who had murdered his brother, who himself had murdered his brother, came to the throne in 466. He would lead the Visigoths in extending their domain further, fighting against Rome and destroying the last vestiges of their authority there. By 472, Western Roman rule in Hispania was over. The Visigothic kingdom came to extend from Poitiers in western France to modern Portugal, apart from Galicia, still controlled by the Suebi, and some regions in the north which they found difficulty in accessing, controlled by the Celtiberian groups and Basques. A few years later, in 476, the Western Roman Empire itself fell. Roman authority had collapsed in the region. However, the region was still very much Roman in a cultural and linguistic sense. The Hispano-Roman population numbered around...
I have a friend who... we have an inside joke about Rome not being built in a day. And I was just thinking about when people talk about the fall of Rome. The fall of Rome was really a slow degradation over time. I think it's something that people don't really fully appreciate about the whole narrative around the fall of Rome. So if Rome wasn't built in a day, it also didn't fall in a day either. It's something that was just kind of a gradual degradation. My understanding is because they spread themselves too thin. Couldn't really exert control over the various regions that were, you know, outlying to them. Or outlying to their centroid, whatever you want to call it.
6 million at this time, with the new Germanic rulers perhaps numbering at a mere 200,000.
Damn!
Furthermore, the Visigoths were themselves quite Romanized. As a result, the Roman language, culture, institutions, and despite Euric's suppression of Catholicism in favor of his people's Arian Christianity, religion would remain dominant in the area, as is evident even today in many ways, including in the very name of the country, Spain, from the Latin rather than a Germanic. In fact, the Visigoths saw themselves
Spain what?
rather than a Germanic origin. In fact, the Visigoths...
Well, I'm actually kind of curious. You didn't really mention, what is Spain? Word origin. Ultimately comes from the Latin word Hispania, which is believed to have origin in Phoenician word Hispania, or Hispania, and the Phoenician word is thought to have been land of rabbits. Wow. Land of rabbits. What a heritage.
You're all right.
I'm gonna do something a little different this play around. Same thing with the Jedi consular character. As I'm like reacclimating to the mechanics of this game, what I want to do is, you know, I've been using the companions, regardless of their personality and everything, as a healer. Just kind of make the game flow by faster, make it easier. I don't really have to worry or think or strategize. But what I want to start doing is having the characters take on whatever role kind of fits their character. So him, I imagine him not much as a healer, but more as a damage person. So if I do that, if I switch him to damage, I'm gonna have to, you know, kind of pay better attention to my own battle tactics, because I can rely when I have a healer on simply just kind of shooting and racking up damage and just not worrying about my health. But if I switch him over to a DPS role, then I don't have a healer, and so I got to worry about the health of both of our characters and kind of managing, you know, that as a resource in the middle of battle. Okay, I'm not sure. Been trying to use this one. Oh, that's right. It only works when they're at 30% health. I keep wondering why I can't proc it. That's a term, right? Proc? I'm gonna Google that actually. Proc.
Goths saw themselves not as the replacers of Roman Hispania, but its heirs. Romanized though these Visigoths were, the conquerors would remain separate from the conquered. Visigoths and Hispano-Romans operated under separate codes of law, and intermarriage was forbidden under penalty of death for quite some time. Despite their success, Visigothic hegemony was not guaranteed. These were still unstable times, and there were other powers with which to contend. To the east, the Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, which had survived, had not yet given up on the idea of Rome as the universal empire. It would not be long before the empire struck back. They...
Byzantium. I always like that name. Name's so cool. Byzantine.
Wish I had a couple dozen thermal detonators right now.
There's bound to be somebody around here with a clearance pass. You ready for some more action, Captain?
Action Captain. They call me Action
Captain.
Captain.
Hispania in mind. To the north and east, the Visigoths bordered other Germanic tribes, just as brave and just as ambitious, namely the Franks, who would soon begin making their mark on history. History becomes blurry during the period of Visigothic rule, but thankfully, enough information survives to tell a remarkable story. In 484, Uric died and was succeeded by his son, Alaric II. It would be he who would take on the burgeoning Franks in battle. The Catholic Franks
Goddamn, one shot.
themselves the protectors of the Catholics of Iberia, who lived under Arian Visigothic rule, and used this as a partial justification to invade their territory. The Franks, under their king Clovis, would defeat the Visigoths in 507 at the Battle of Vouillé. Here, King Alaric II was killed in battle. As a result of this devastating blow, much of the modern French land beyond the Pyrenees became Frankish. The Visigoths, who had formerly held their capital at Toulouse, now ruled the city of Toledo. But this defeat in truth had impeded their ability to rule altogether. A long period of instability followed Vouillé. Though the Visigoths were fairly democratic, in the sense that kings had to be elected by the nobles, it did not prevent civil wars and power grabbing. Foreign powers,
if I'd call it democratic, it's more of an aristocracy,
exploited opportunities to intervene in these civil wars. In 549, civil war erupted again under King Agila I. This time, however, a new contender would enter the stage. When news of these events reached the city of Constantinople, the Emperor of Byzantium, Justinian the Great, ordered his forces to Hispania. The primary goal of his reign was, simply, to restore the Roman Empire. He and his generals had already retaken Italy and much of North Africa. Now it was time to reacquire Hispania from the barbarians while they quarreled amongst themselves. In 552, during the Civil War, Eastern Roman forces landed in the south of Iberia under a commander whose identity is not known for certain. The Civil War ended in 555 when Aguila was assassinated and Athanagild became king. But it was too late. The Byzantine presence now extended throughout much of southeast Iberia and the Balearic Isles. And though Athanagild would try, it would prove too difficult to oust them for the time being. Unfortunately for the Visigoths, however, the Romans would have no choice but to stop there. Justinian's empire was feeling the effects of a plague which had struck them very recently, and the emperor himself died in 565. With his death, we now know in hindsight, died any last hope of restoring Roman authority in the west. Athanagild died in 567 from an unusual cause for a Visigothic king, natural causes. The year after, Liuvagild became king. He would see more success along his borders. In the 570s, he waged war against the Byzantines, retaking the city of Cordoba and thinning out their territory significantly. He would also wage successful and merciless wars against the Basques and Cantabrians, sending them back into their territory and totally defeating the Suebi once and for all, annexing their territory. He did make important mistakes, however, such as naming his son Hermenegild his co-ruler. He used this position to revolt against his father, sparking the Civil War. Hermenegild had converted to Catholicism. His father used treason. He attempted to use this to gain support from foreign powers, and achieved nominal support of the Pope, but this did not save him. And in 585, his father captured him in the city of Seville and banished him, where he would later be killed. Hermenegild had failed, but likely hastened the inevitable, the move to Catholicism. Indeed, Liuvagild died in 586, and his successor, his other son Recared, and the kingdom along with him, converted to Catholicism soon after. Most, but not all, of his subjects peacefully followed suit. Recared died in 601, and his kingdom entered into a long period of instability and civil war once again, in which most kings died violent deaths. The Church would attempt to use their new influence in the region to stop the violence by declaring kings sacred agents of God, but this would not stop the regicide completely. However, despite the chaos, in the south, the Visigoths were able to see success, finally ousting the Byzantines from Iberia in 624. The Romans would retain control over the Balearic Isles, but their mainland defeat was decisive. They would never again return. The Visigoths now controlled the whole of Hispania apart from the north, and, through their conversion, achieved greater unity with the Hispano-Romans. In fact, by now, the distinction between Hispano-Roman and Goth was becoming less important. More and more, they began to see themselves as one people, no longer Romani and Visigoti, but as a single Hispano. However, this unity was exclusive to them and did not extend to other groups of Iberia. This perspective was strengthened in 654 when the Lex Visigotorum, or Visigothic Code of Laws, came into practice.
Finally!
This code of laws replaced those of the past and applied equally to Visigoth and Hispano-Roman. Political order, and indeed life in general, in Visigothic Hispania would remain unstable for decades to come. Most kings struggled to sit on the throne. Whatever power and control the kings of the Visigoths could wield, in the end, would not be enough. In the 8th century, a new invader would arrive on the doorstep of Hispania. They would not be so easily turned away. Emboldened by the spirit of their new religion, they would topple the Visigothic kingdom entirely and change the course of the history of Spain forever.
I didn't pack enough. I have to carry all this. Why am I doing this? Never leaving.
In the 7th century, the Middle East witnessed the birth
You're all right.
Eat my tits. I don't even know what that means, but whatever.
Been monitoring you on the security network. You sure know how to make an entrance.
Guess we found our slicer.
She got that pixie
But
cut.
why does this room look like a prison?
Because it is a prison. Thanks for noticing. Whatever issues you're having with the guild, I'm on your side. I'm just a slave here.
I'm not here to blast you.
Then is there any chance you're here to free me? Because I'm definitely ready to not be here. The guild locked me up 2 years ago. Forced me to work for them. I'll do anything to get out. What do you need?
Put me on Skavik's trail and I'll free you.
Finding his trail is easy. Just look for the slime.
Okay, that's not an
I
answer.
knew that Corellian pig lizard Skavik had ticked off the wrong person. No wonder he was in such a hurry. Skavik paid the guild to clean his identity record. They made me slice into the Republic's main database and delete all his arrest warrants.
Knowing Skavik, you spent a lot of time deleting things.
It's like he's trying to set a record for the biggest criminal of all time.
Yet
Sorry,
he's still petty.
That's all I know about Skavik. I'm not sure how else to help you.
You're not going anywhere unless you give me something useful.
What if I undo everything I did for him? That might be useful, right? Take away his spotless identity record, and Skavik can't walk 10 meters without attracting attention.
There you go.
He'll be a lot easier to find. I can ruin Skavik's identity record for you in no time. If I do that, will you let me go?
Show me what you can do to him first.
I've been slicing the Republic's main databank for years. There's nothing I can't do. I saved copies of everything I erased from Skavik's identity record. All I have to do now is transfer the data back. There. Easy. The minute he passes an identity checkpoint, it'll trigger an alarm.
My character's not evil. He's just morally kind of doesn't really care.
A gangster put a price on my head. Can you fix that?
Thing about gangsters is, getting in trouble with them is easy. Getting out? That's something else. Sorry, I can't help you there. Okay, let me go now, so I can make it out before they lock this place down.
I was always planning to let you go.
Thank you, you're my hero.
Maybe we should go check in with Darmus. See if he's got any new info on Skavik.
Okay. Where's this Darmus dude at? Dealer's Den Cantina. That's pretty much all I got time for right now. I might be back on later. Maybe. Okay, maybe. We shall see. But, yeah. Call it a day. See you guys next time. Alright, deuces, my gooses.